Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And we have another amazing episode for you guys today. And my guest, she's an amazing person. She's a death doula. We've had an amazing conversation. You guys are going to be blown away just about how knowledgeable she is about everything. So, without further ado, let me just do this before we get started. Now, before we get started, I would like to remind you that this is for educational purposes only. And if this is your first time, do me a favor, head over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. And if you know anyone who can benefit from these conversations that we have, do me a favor, share with them. Now, get your questions and comments ready. And if you have them, put those in the comment section. Now, without further ado, I'm not going to hold you guys up. Nikki, how you doing today? And welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So before we get started, this has been a long time coming, right? You know what I'm saying? Everybody's rushing, life happens and things like that. And it's great to see your smile on the screen today. And we've had an amazing conversation before, right?
Yes, we have.
So
Yes, we have.
do me a favor, introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Nikki Smith. I'm also known as Nikki the Death Doula, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach.
Awesome. Now, let's talk about your story, right? You know, we talked a lot about this, and we had a blast the last time that we talked. So
yeah, we did.
How did you? I mean, who was Nikki before you became a death doula, right?
Oh,
how did you get into this work?
I've had such a past. So I actually went to school for theater, in case that's not totally obvious. Theater was my passion for a long time. I loved everything about it, and it never lined up. I worked in theater for a while. But I also worked a day job for a long time in IT. So but throughout my entire life, I've always had a passion for helping people. Mm-hmm. I had a job for a long time in a nursing home. I really enjoyed working with the elderly, and I had residents there that I was around during their final days and weeks. And I just enjoyed that work so much. And it was always kind of there in the back of my head, but one of those things, like a lot of people, I got into corporate America and I got real comfortable. I was making a nice income. I had great benefits. Everything seemed nice, but I was not fulfilled. I didn't like my job. I didn't like the company I was working for. And, when you're not happy in one thing, other parts of your life start to kind of fall apart too. So,
that's true.
Yeah. So then COVID happened. And like everybody in the world, I was stuck at home. I was still working, but man, I couldn't do anything else. So I was stuck at home all the time and kind of reevaluated everything. And I just knew hadn't been happy in a long time. Right. And I worked the life coach, and we kept coming back to this doula work. And she was like, I feel like this is what you need to do. And I said, you're right. So she was the one that gave me the push I needed. I went through training and opened up my business, and here I am.
Nice. Now, as a doula, explain, because I know what a doula is, right? But I know that there are several people out there that may not know what a doula is, and the sort of doula that you are, end of life services, right? We have, we can talk about the multitude of doulas that are out there: pet loss, birth, et cetera, et cetera. But end of life doula is a special type of doula, and we've talked about this because in my interest right now, I am looking to get my certification to be an end-of-life doula, because being a grief coach and being a male, right? There's this huge stigma about, the type of work that it is. Oh, it's only for women and things like that. I'm like, no, man, you got to understand, like end-of-life services, when you helping someone realize the plan that they have and being there to provide those services, it's justice not only to the individual, because you're giving them what they want, right? But it's also a justice to the family, because that responsibility of taking care of everything so they can enjoy those moments with their family is huge, right? So let's dive into that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I think most people have heard of a birth doula, and I get that a lot. Like, well, I know what a birth doula is. And doula is an ancient Greek word that just means female maidservant or female slave. And all that is someone who helps. So birth doulas provide non-medical support through the birthing process, up to and including the birthing process and shortly thereafter. So that's where the term death doula came from. We were kind of modeled after the same thing as a birth doula. We do the non-medical support for leading up to the death process, at the death process, and shortly thereafter. And I mean, my services can start anywhere. I've worked with people that are young and healthy, but they just want to have their end of life plans ready. They want to have their living will, final will, all their paperwork put together. They want to have a plan. They want to know where they're going. So I kind of put together little packets for people, like here's how to plan for your end of life. I have financial advisors I work with that can help them get set up for life insurance and, long-term care insurance, things like that, so that you can live your life peacefully now, knowing you're prepared for if and when death occurs. Because, I mean, I don't know if anybody knows this, but the mortality rate right now is 100% for humans.
This is very true. You're right. I don't think people really understand that. We're in a situation to where we're not getting out of this alive.
No, we are not. We are all going to die one day, and we don't always get to pick when. So, yeah. And then most of the people I work with, though, are entering hospice. They've finished their treatment. They're ready to be at the end of life. They're, ready to stop treatment and go on from there. So I'll work with the family and the dying person together to help make sure they're making informed decisions with hospice, because it's not all easy. It's not all cut and dry. You need to know what to expect, what questions to ask, what to look for. If you're in a place where you have multiple hospices to choose from, or if you even need it. And I'm not lucky enough to live in a state like you are, where medical aid in dying is legal. So I can't walk people through that path just yet. Hopefully, we're working on it. Hopefully that'll be legal here in Ohio sometime soon. But I just make sure we have a plan together so we know what to expect and when. If the dying person has a specific way they want things to be when they're in their final days, when they can no longer speak for themselves, then I will be their voice for them to make sure that their wishes are being met.
Now, see, here's the thing, right? When we talk about death, dying, and grief, there's such a huge stigma around it, especially, and this is crazy. I just got done doing the Death Cafe, and the turnout was amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing people, amazing conversation. First one I've ever done, and I have to say, I rocked it, right? You know what I'm saying? It was pretty amazing. I rocked it. I had some help though. Shout out to my friend Lisa Oliver. She sent over some information, helped me out immensely as I went through the process of understanding how to facilitate a death cafe, right? So big shout out to her. She helped out. She helped out immensely. But here's the one thing. A lot of people were like shocked because of the direction that it went, and most of everyone was like, I never understood how selfish I was with my family, because we talked about the importance of having a plan, right? Having someone else there to help you go through the process, so your family doesn't have to worry about where to start.
Yeah.
First and foremost, you know what I'm saying? Because, when you go through sudden loss and things like that, and these things do happen, tomorrow's not promised to anyone. And, so when that sudden loss happened, they're thrown into a whirlwind of chaos, trying to figure out where to start, what's the next steps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I go, this is the purpose of having everything laid out, because once you have that laid out, your family don't have to worry about who's getting what. We both know. We've seen this, right? You know what I'm saying? The head buddy. Oh, we got to. I know they want us to do it. They wanted me to have this, that, and another.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know? So do you understand, right? And then once you have that, you no longer focus on that. You focus on living your best life.
Yes.
Right? You live your best life, because you can go to sleep at night knowing that, hey, if tomorrow don't come for me, my family's taken care of. My state's taken care of, and they can just enjoy that moment with them. And I said, well, since now that you have this time, what do you plan on doing with it? How do you plan on utilizing those moments in your life to make those the best memorable moments that you have? Now you don't have to worry about this over here. And you'd be surprised at how many people is like, you know what? I would like to go skydiving, or I want to go scuba diving and boot the sharks or something like that, right? Crazy stuff like that, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in your expert opinion, how important is it to have a plan moving forward? And then how do after that, how do you encourage people to have the conversations with their loved ones, right? Because that's a huge thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And those conversations can be tricky, which is why I usually ask people to have me present just so I can be that non-partial third party to kind of help facilitate the conversations.
Mhm.
It is very important to have a plan and process, especially if there is something like a terminal diagnosis or an illness that we know will eventually end your life.
Right.
So that you're not constantly floundering around and worrying. If you like, say you have ALS and you've got anywhere from 6 months to 2 years left, do you want to spend that last 6 months to 2 years worrying about, did I get this paperwork done? Did I get this done? What's going to happen? Is that one brother I hate going to show up and be in my house like while I'm can't, speak for myself to, so it's incredibly important to have that in place. You're only going to die once, so you don't get a do-over. So let's make it go the way you
Depending on
want.
who you are now.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen some magicians that came back and was like, I thought you died, man.
Right. Nope. Once you're gone, you're gone. You don't get to try again. So,
True.
yeah, it's very important to have those conversations. And some people are very resistant to it. Like I hold death cafes here too. And a lot of people that show up are just, they want to have these conversations, but nobody will talk about it.
Right.
And I think we just have an innate fear as humans that if we talk about it, we're going to make it happen. And that's not how it is. Just saying the word death is not going to make somebody die.
This is very true. But honestly, there's so many things to factor in, right?
Mhm.
Because culturally, we've gotten out of the habit of talking, right?
Yes.
This is what's going on. And we often wait to the last minute to have those conversations when a person is really not coherent about it.
Right.
So, how would you um, encourage others to have that conversation? How can they start the conversations with their loved ones?
So I just had a podcast episode on that too, because starting those conversations can be really hard, especially if you're the younger, you're the child, and your mother's getting to be in her late 80s and she might be showing signs of dementia. And you need to start having these conversations. She might give you oh, I don't want to bother you with this. I don't want you to worry about it. Let's not worry. Mom, you're making things harder for me this way. If you're trying to protect me, let's make things a little bit easier for me.
Right,
Um,
right.
I just try to caution people, I hate to use horror stories, but I've seen that happen where somebody's on their deathbed and nothing has been planned, nothing's been put in place, and the entire family is fighting each other over who gets what,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
we're going to go, what's going to happen with their body when they're gone. Like if you have all that done and it's in writing and it's notarized, signed, stamped, sealed, whatever, there can't be that argument. If you have a burial place that's special to your family and your heart and you want to be there, get it in writing. Because if you don't, I mean, who knows? You might have that one kid that's like, no, I want to cremate her so I can have her ashes with me for the rest of my life. And that's not what she wanted. So
Right.
if you want to make sure you get what you want, you have to plan it out ahead of time. It sucks. And sometimes you have to do the tough love approach.
Very
But
true.
I
Very
just
true.
I encourage people, especially if they're talking with their parents and some of the older generations are not comfortable with these subjects, to just say, I know you love me and you want things to be easy for me, but you're making it harder. So help me so that I can get through this easier.
Okay. I like that approach. Because I recently, not too long ago, I had to have the conversation with my sister, my younger sister, right? And it's just she and I now. Younger brother, parents, everyone is gone. I
Mhm.
mean, of course, we got a few aunties and uncles around. Um, and I told her, I said, I'm getting up in age. If it hasn't become very apparent to you yet, we're losing friends. We're losing friends left and right, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, this is the way life is, right? The older,
Mhm.
and when we were younger, we're told this, right? The older you get, the more friends you're going to lose, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And it's inevitable, but we don't pay attention to that, right? And so I had to have the conversation with her. I said, look, I don't need no cremation. I don't need no burial. But this is the way that I'm going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I just need you to understand that you don't need to do anything. As a matter of fact, I got some things put aside for you, my nieces, my two girls, and things like that. I've already got it laid out. My sister go, I don't want to talk about that because that means I have to face the reality that you may die one day. I said,
Mm-hmm.
baby, that is the reality,
It is.
right? I work in the grief field, and one thing I understood and have understood for a very long time now, grief is inevitable,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I can ease the transition for me,
Mm-hmm.
for you to understand.
Yeah. Well, and
And
if you have a conversation like that, like, let's say it's the parent or the sibling says, I want you to know what I want because you're probably going to have to deal with this when I'm gone. And they're like, oh no, I don't want to think about it, or because they're afraid it's going to hurt. Well, okay, you're scared. Let's talk about that first. Let's break that down first. Let's find out why you're scared and let's face that. And talking about it helps. The more you talk about something, the easier it is to deal with and the less stigmatized it is. It takes away if you want to take that power back from death and hold that power yourself, talk about it more. It helps give that power back to you.
that's very, very true. Now, you had said something I want to touch on,
Mm-hmm.
and when people are afraid, because the biggest question that comes up, I'm afraid of dying.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's a lot more common than what people think. And I've heard some of the toughest people. I've even said it myself, like, I'm not afraid of dying, but then you get by yourself and you start thinking about it, like, man, I really don't want to die. Right. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? There's a sense of fear that comes along with it because
Mm-hmm.
of the unknown, I,
Yes.
I think, right? And so in situations where you've been in, how do you approach a situation where someone goes, you know what, I'm afraid of dying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so how do you approach that situation? I've had it happen. I know
Yeah.
how I've approached it because
Yeah.
being a male, I normally talk with men,
Mm-hmm.
and and there's certain words I won't use, like man up, or what I'm saying,
Yeah.
oh man, this
Yeah.
this part of life and this, that, and another. No, my approach is different with everyone. So
Right.
I
Well,
tend to,
and I mean, we can flip that on the other side too. When you're talking with women, women have this tendency to hold everything in and to hide those
mm,
feelings because for different reasons, but we're the caregivers, so we can't think about our own death. We can't think about us
mm,
dying because we're too busy caring for other people. Well, we're going to die too. It's just the same for men as with women. Mortality is still 100%. But if somebody comes to me, and I actually have worked with clients who are just genuinely scared of dying, and that's, first of all, reassuring them that's normal because everybody is. I deal with death all the time. I'm probably one of the most comfortable people talking about it. I'm still scared of dying. Of course I am. Because at this point in my life, I don't know how I'm going to die and I don't know when. And of course, it's scary. So just reassuring people that that's okay and it's normal is step
mm,
one. I like to work with people who have a genuine, first of all, I'll work on their anxiety. Like, what can we do if you're having a panic attack? Let's work on breathing techniques to calm ourselves down and reground ourselves. But what is it about? What is it about death that's scaring you? Is it the act of dying? Is it the unknown? And we just pick it apart. And the more I get them talking about it, the easier it is for them to understand what it is they're afraid of and realize it's not that bad. It's not that scary. Yeah, we don't know, but we also have no control over it. Right. So it's maybe take a little Zen Buddhist approach to it of letting it go and just leaving it in the hands of the universe because we can't control it. So why try? Why break your brain trying to figure it all out? But, I like to just delve into them, like, find out what it is they're scared of. Is it the act of dying? Is it the afterlife? Let's think about best case scenario and let's think about worst case scenario. Talk it all out, and you'll find that worst case scenario is probably very unlikely, and best case scenario is probably a little more likely. And then once people understand that, they feel a lot better.
Okay, I love that because I just learned something new there, right? And it helps me because I got my second Deaf Cafe coming up this weekend,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking about changing up something, maybe put in a topic and diving into it or something like that. I think the more I do, the better, the more experience I have with it and things like that. I'll be able to kind of formulate some things, but wow, man, that's something that I thought about, but I also thought about, how would people take it
Mhm.
uh, in this approach? So I
Mhm.
often have to step back, take a breath, and read the situation and read an individual
Mhm.
and go, okay, I can see that this individual is a more of your
Mhm.
introverted sort
Yeah.
of character or personality, and I think that um, as someone who works in the field, you you have to take these things into account,
Mhm.
right? Because the last thing that we want to do, and this is just coming from my perspective, and let me know what you think about this. But the last thing that you want to do is jump in with the wrong approach and push a
Mhm.
person away from the conversation
Oh
that you
yeah.
need to have, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have to, any client I work with, I mean, the first one or two times we work together, it's just me kind of getting a feel for them and
Mhm.
how what helps them tick, what doesn't, what's going to scare them off. Because some people need and kind of want that like more aggressive approach. And some people really, if you approach them too quickly, they're like a little scared animal and they're going to back into a corner and they're shut down and now you can't help them. So yeah, I have to really get a feel, and I'm pretty intuitive for the most part. I so far, knock on wood, have not gotten that wrong with anybody. But yeah, once I get to know what's going to help them, and I tend to use mostly with my clients creative visualization and journaling.
Mhm.
But I have had some people that's not going to help them. They can't do that creative visualization as easily as other people can, and
Right.
they don't want to write stuff down, and that's fine. So we'll find other techniques for them.
Okay. I love that. I love that. What are some of the other tools, uh, say, that you use in the services that you provide? I know before services, during the transition, and
Mhm.
after. So, what are some of the strongest tools? And I'm gonna word that way. What are some of the most effective tools that you use to help guide people along that way?
For end of life for end of life
Yeah, right,
planning and
right,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So most people that I deal with are scared, confused, and they need direction. So I'm a very organized person. I get it to be a little type A at times. So I'm really good with lists and spreadsheets. So if I'm helping somebody with an end of life plan, we'll put together a task list of things that they need to do and when, so they know. I'll even give them like a nice folder or an envelope with everything in it, and everything will be labeled. This is for 1 month prior. This is for 1 week prior. This is for the active dying phase. This is for right after death. This is for a week after death, a month after death. So everything is there. They don't have to think about it. So
Okay.
that's my favorite approach for dealing with my end of life doula work. Um, for grief support, like I said, visualization is tongue twister is my favorite tool to use, and most people are very adaptive to that. So because it's not as deep as like hypnosis or deep meditation, because I'm not a hypnotherapist. I haven't had that training. But creative visualization is it's a combination of imagination and meditation. I let them guide me. I rarely guide them. It's something everybody can do that they don't realize they can.
Right. See, that's I love that you said that because it let me know that I'm walking in the right direction, right? There was something I was thinking about. And I said, you know what, I want to I want to do something to bring adults in and express themselves through art, right? Creative ways of
Mhm.
doing things, and the theme of it would be, what does your grief look like today? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but what does it look like in this moment with you? And I can just imagine sitting there watching people do all of these creative things, um, and then having a conversation with them afterwards, right? But I think it's the put them in an environment, a creative environment,
Mhm.
to where they can explore be around other individuals, be able to talk with them, like laugh and things like that, and just see where that goes. And and then doing something like that similar with kids, where they can do the art, but also bringing in Legos, because kids
Yeah.
are very creative. And I'm always curious because I have not worked with children yet, but I do have colleagues that do, that work with them, and they have some of the most amazing stories, because they go, when you thinking about children and things like that.
Mhm.
And what I'm doing, I'm tying this in, because I'm trying to figure out, when it comes down to children, because I've seen this happen before.
Mhm.
How do they process the end of life conversations as well? And how do you kind of help them? Because
Yeah.
nowadays, you have kids who have lost parents,
Mhm.
and I can understand. I try to understand. They're coming from a place of, they're scared,
Yeah.
right? What's the next steps for them? Who's going
Mhm.
to keep them safe from here on out?
Yeah.
And how are they going to navigate the rest of their life? Because they do have to deal with the reality that one, if not both, of their parents are gone. I do have a cousin who has lost both of his parents at a very
Oh.
young age.
Oh.
And, he was a twin, right? So
Mhm.
him and his sister both lost their mom and dad. And so watching them, for the time that I was there, I didn't know how to approach it, because when you've never lost your parents before, how do you approach something like that, right? How do you have the conversation with that
Yeah.
young woman?
Well, in an ideal world, the first significant loss a child will have will not be one of their parents. That's not always going to be the case.
Right.
Um, but I actually was just working with a friend of mine who has two young children, and they had a friend who was, I think she was 8, and she had terminal brain cancer and she passed away. So she called me. She was like, I don't know how to explain this to my kids. They know she was sick, but they didn't know she was dying, and she's going to be gone in the next couple of days, and I don't know how to have this conversation. And I mean, first, it depends on the age of the child, right? Any children below like 5 or 4, they're just
Mhm.
not really going to grasp the concept of death right away. It's just
It's
not
true.
going to. Yeah, they're just not fully formed there yet. I mean, brain's not fully formed till your 20s anyway, but um so just patience and understanding that they're not going to understand death the way we do until they're a
Right.
little bit older. And even then, as they get into 5, 6, 7, 8, they'll understand it better, but they're not going to have the same history that we do as adults. They're not going to have the same knowledge we do as adults. So when talking to kids, honesty is best. Honesty is best. And don't use euphemisms, use real language with them. It might seem weird to talk to your kid about, grandma's dead. You don't have to say grandma's sleeping and she'll never wake up again. Do not tell your kids that. That's awful. um,
Yeah.
because then they're going to never let you sleep again because they're afraid you'll go to sleep and never wake up. But, and they went to heaven. Well, they may not understand heaven's not an actual place they can go visit grandma. So use real words and don't leave them too many blank spaces, because kids have fantastic imaginations and they will use them to fill in the blank spaces that we don't. I always encourage people, as long as our kids are over, I would say 5 or 6 years old, if there's a funeral, take them. Don't leave them at home, because they're not going to, again, they're going to fill in the blanks as to what all this means, and they might get it wrong, and you're not there to clarify it. So now they've got this wrong thing in their head that's going to scare them, you know?
Yeah.
Let them be part of things. If there's a case of somebody dying, end of life, grandma, grandpa, aunt, cousin, even another parent, let them be present for that. Be with them, be there to answer questions. If they're too squeamish or if they're not taking it well, make sure you have an exit strategy so you can remove them. But instead of leaving it up to them to try to figure it out on their own, explain it as
Mhm.
best you can.
Okay. I love that. I definitely love that, man. So much in this conversation, and I'm really hoping I had to delete a comment up there. People
I
can
saw
get
something pop
free.
up.
Yeah, no, I caught it, you know what I'm saying? So I blocked those individuals, and I want to remind people, if you're going to comment on here, please be respectful of the guests and the people that are here, because if not, I'll just block you.
Uh-oh.
I'll just block you, okay? Be respectful.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, you know, this is for educational purposes only, and we want to educate people and answer those questions as we go. So you know, have some legitimate questions, you know, but just be respectful to myself and my guests as well, and because we can see you, we can see you. So
Okay.
yeah, you know, so I just wanted to put that out there for anyone else who's having some sort of idea of being disrespectful when they jump on, you know,
Oh
just be
dear.
respectful, you know. But with that being said, Nikki, how can people find you?
So you can find my website, nikkithedeathdoula.com, and my name is spelled Nikki. I have a podcast. It's called Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula. There's just tons of information that's more focused on grief and grief work, but I do talk about what I do as a doula there as well. Tons of great information on that. So yeah, I'm on all the socials. I'm on, well, not all. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Nikki the Death Doula.
Awesome. Her information will be down below. So anybody who's interested in learning more about what she does as a death doula, or interested in learning what a death doula does, that information, go check her out. But also I was on her podcast before, so
Yeah.
beautiful host. We had a great conversation. You guys go over there and check her out. Give her that support as well. And for everyone else, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
And we're going to wrap this thing up. And I want to say thank you guys for everything. And if you made it all the way through the conversation, do me a favor, head over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, Nikki, before I let you go, I always ask my guests this: if you can leave the guests with anything, what would you leave them with?
Oh, don't be scared of death and dying. And don't be afraid to talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the easier it will be to accept it.
I love that.
Yeah.
But Nikki, thank you again for joining us today. Right, we finally got it in.
Yes,
you know,
yes,
and
we did. Thank you.
You know, I mean, it's so much information. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'm Tony Ledger. I'm your host. This is going to conclude this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And until next time, we thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. And until next time, peace.